I'm Mike DaSilva. You're at my shop, DaSilva Ukulele Company. We're in Berkeley, California. Been here about 3 years. We're going on my 4th year. I got into ukes probably around 98, 99. Started playing. Had a friend got me interested. And somewhere in my mind, I knew I always wanted to build them, but I really started earnestly collecting them. I had a pretty good Martin collection of ukuleles, and as I was collecting them, that urge to build them kept getting stronger and stronger. One of the communities I fell into was some guys who were real good collectors, and they have some old ukes, so things going back 100 years to the original ukulele makers. So one of my desires was always to emulate them and to make reproductions. So I started making Martin reproductions, and then running into some of these old friends of mine who have these original ukes by the makers of, Santo and Diaz and Nunez, the original Portuguese guys. Having access to those ukes has really spurred my interest in making more reproductions, so that's been a real fun part. When I build those, I build them in a modern way and use all power tools where needed, and I don't build them exactly the same way. And it still amazes me, how they were able to do it. The wood is thinner than I can get it, the detail is more, more precise than I can get the cuts, and they did it all by hand. The reasons for doing reproductions is to partly get the building experience. But even though we have old ukes, we have 100-year-old ukes, and we can string them up and play them. We want to be a little careful with the older ukes, so we're not playing them as hard. It's not really the same. I don't really know what those ukuleles sounded like. So building them gives you this, connects you to that time. And if we get the same consistency in the new reproductions, it gives you a really good sense of what they went through. You get a sense of the sound they heard. So one of the things I imagine, when I finish my reproductions, wow, this is what happened. This is what happened when they finished it. They played it for somebody, and the same emotions that I have, whether it sounds good or somebody smiles and relates to it, it's sort of the same emotions that probably happened then. Since we don't really have anybody alive from that time, this is about the only way you can get that experience of what the sound was like, what the feelings were like when they heard those instruments. This is a reproduction of a Santo. The original ukuleles that I have access to were definitely circa 1890. And we have pictures, so a lot of the decorative aspects come from the pictures. The instrument that I have access to is simpler than this, and we've made reproductions based on that. And then the main thing is the body, is having access to that body and be able to measure it and see how thin the pieces are and getting the shape exactly right is really a big part of doing these reproductions. So I've built maybe a half dozen of Santo copies, and this was one of those I was telling you about that when people strum it, they first look at it and they go, "Oh, it's so tiny, and it's nothing. It's so light." And so what they expect is this thin little sound to come out, but then you strum it, and it's full and it fills the room. An instrument isn't just a piece of wood that looks nice. It's got to sound good. It's got to be. There's a huge functional part of it. So it's the sound is the final result I'm after. There's always this thing in your head about, well, is it going to sound good or not? Am I doing the right thing at this time? But I still touch every piece of wood. I still listen to it, as I'm going through, and it's still important for me to feel it, And that's probably that's the difference between myself and a factory. Even though the guys in the factory are certainly as capable of doing the same level of craftsmanship, they don't have the time to really spend the time with each piece of wood. It's funny, but I feel like I get to know the instrument by the time I string it up. I never get any surprise. One of my biggest joys is when people pick up some instruments, and it doesn't have to be mine, any instruments, and then they strum it, and that look that they first have, especially with ukuleles. I think people expect it out of really expensive guitars and some other things, but it's always I'm around ukes all the time. People pick these up and they give it a little strum, and you see this little kind of the eyebrows raised and this little bit of surprise, and they go, "Wow, where did that nice sound come from?" And it happens over and over and over again. The part that I go through, the thinking about it, the hand part of it, is really a very private affair. Right? No one else really experiences. I can't really convey what it is, and it really doesn't matter. When I'm there building something, it's all about. It really is about the meaning that I find in that process. It's being connected to other parts of the world and other times through building this instrument. So at times I might just picking up a piece of wood, it's being connected to that tree. So I don't think of the piece of wood just as a piece of wood. It was a tree. It was a living thing before. And again, being connected to the sound that it might produce. So for me, it's getting in touch with all those things at the same time. And that's why it is really private. I think if somebody else were to do it, they'd get a totally different sense out of it.